Okay, so this week, you've probably noticed on the schedule, there's not a whole lot going on. Some stuff with GitHub. We'll talk about that some, but as you're probably familiar with, on that you're going to want to just go around and click on stuff and figure it out. But we'll still look over it some here in a few minutes. But this seemed like a great time to add in some odds and ends that I wanted to cover, things that I feel are important. One thing I'm going to start out with here, I believe a lot of y'all know that most of my computer degree was done online. I'm going to start off with something here that I thought was way, way harder than it needed to be when I went to learn it. It took me forever, and it's something that could have been stated in just a couple sentences. So I'm going to state it in a couple sentences. That way it doesn't take you all forever to learn. I have an example here. I showed this one before. This little thing just has getting started to migrate from working on a local machine to working on software in the cloud, but I put some shortcuts on the desktop. So I'm going to open here. Notice the icon here. I can look at this. I don't see a properties. I was expecting to see some properties, but there it is. Notice that this doesn't open, the target is a .bat file. So this is actually something I wrote in PowerShell to open a bunch of stuff. It's a .ps1 file, but the target doesn't open that. It opens a batch file. So if I open that, eventually, oh, there it goes. And while you're working with stuff, buttons like this one can be really useful. So this is a button that just opens the code. You can see the hit in there says this GUI. So open that up. Here's what actually opens this batch file, which essentially hides the command prompt, and then it runs this file, which goes in and checks if, well, here it checks to make sure there's an Apache server running, virtual Apache server running on this machine. And if it's not running, it turns it on. Then it goes and makes sure that this folder where files will be written to exist. If it doesn't, it creates it. And same thing with the temporary text file for holding logs, basically, of what's going on. That way I can have a back button, which currently isn't in the GUI, but a log to keep, that way I can use a history log, that way I can have a back and forward button, undo and redo. But if it doesn't exist, it creates it. And that's what we want to do right off the bat. So I don't need any of these. That's just an example. And here's the actual PowerShell file. It just typed up a Windows form GUI. Nothing too fancy there. Icon on it. Different things. We'll see Windows form. That's the library we'll be working with in Visual Basic for the last two modules of the class. Like I said, I need to close this one. So that's kind of the idea. Is we don't want users to open our program directly. We'll have users open a batch file that checks to make sure everything we need is there, right? Any icons, any folders, any files, internet access on some programs. The batch file will check to make sure all of that stuff is there, and then it will start the program. So I want to take a look at that real quick, and then we will take a look at creating an installer. That's really easy, and just a couple odds and ends. So let's look at this stuff for when we're finished with a piece of software. So I guess the first thing we need is a piece of software. I'm just going to do a really simple one here, kind of the standard print, hello world. And then I'll come down here and add an input. That way it waits. Push, enter to end. So I'll save that. flash drive. This is Module 6 lecture. And I'll call this hello.py. So just about as simple as programs get, but we'll go ahead and use this as our example file for today. So if I come over to File Explorer and come in here, Module 6. So like we've seen, we can double click on it and it runs, does the software. So it looks like everything works there like it needs to. Ready to create an installer. But the thing is, like I was just saying, don't really have resources in this example, but I feel confident y'all can imagine a more common example that's going to need a lot of resources, places, folders to write files to, and pictures for icons and things like that. We want to make sure those are in order. So let's instead of just opening this one and running the program, let's create a batch file that checks for that and then opens this. There's another little thing here. If I go to properties, down here in advanced, y'all may have seen this before. There's no way to change the icon. You change what it opens with, but I can't change the icon on that, so the users would end up with a Python script icon, whereas the batch file will be able to change that. So let's put a batch file together. Okay, so let's do a quick batch file. If you haven't seen work with these before, basically it's what we would put in the command prompt in Windows, just as one file. So it just a whole bunch of command prompt instructions wrote in there. Usually want to start with the line @echo auth. And I'm going to hit Control S, in this folder, and then save it as some name, but with the .bat extension, short for batch. And then we can do things with this. I'm just going to start some things. So if we start Chrome, and let's see, there it is. So all it's going to do is start Chrome. The example opens up and runs, and it should start Chrome. And we can take that a little further. https:// let's go to ivlearn.ivtech.edu. Like we're going to open some homework. That'll be good for the example. Runs that, opens Chrome, and goes to the web page for us. So just a bunch of typed in instructions, things that we're probably used to doing with mouse clicks. Let's see, I guess I could throw in this line. Pause at the end, and a comment, we actually put REM for remark. This is a comment, also known as a remark. To document things, and just a quick example, we can do a whole lot of instructions that way. I want to put the pause in there, at least one. So if I run that, opens the page. We already saw that. It goes to the site we wanted. We can put a whole lot of instructions, basically anything. This probably looks familiar. So here in our Windows command.exe, this little line, press any key to continue. So that's the pause thing. I just thought I'd mention that. But basically, what would go in the command prompt can be put here. And these can also be done as PowerShell files. I usually like to do a batch file that starts a bunch of PowerShell files. And the reason for that is because it's easier to change the icon on a batch file. So that's the icon, the one we give the users, the batch file. When we change the icon on that, a whole lot easier than on the other ones. So let's see I guess that's a good starting example. Just a quick example, and let's do a batch file that opens this. So that way, instead of directly clicking on this, the users can open a batch file that makes sure that's in order. Oh, I guess real quick before we do that, there's my edit button. There it is. Edit with Notepad++. I'm going to turn this echo off for a second. Save that. Turn the echo off. So remove that echo off line. Then when I run it, so you can see it. Yeah, close that. The echo off line stops all this. It spells out everything. Everything that's going on. All the instructions. It's like we were typing them directly into the command prompt one at a time. We usually don't need to see that because we know what's in the file. So that first line echo off just stops that from happening. But you might want to turn that on at some point. I'll leave that in there, just a quick example. For us, well, again, we're going to turn the echo off. And I'll save this as a batch file called, I'll just call it speak.bat. That goes with hello world. The important part is the .bat extension. So it saves as a batch file. You can see by default, let me change those icons. By default, it gives us these little gear icons. We'll change that in a minute. But for us, we're just going to check and see if that file exists before we try to open it. So if, then we can use the keyword exist. Notice it changed blue here in Notepad++. Hello.py. So I'm trying to keep this simple and quick. So I'm just going to check and see if that hello.py file exists. And if it does, I'm going to start it. But if it doesn't, I think I need a space here. There we go. Turn dark blue that time instead of light blue. If it doesn't, I'm just going to echo back to the screen, file not found. And then I'll put a pause in so that message will show up. Look, not too much, nothing too fancy going on. Just check and see if the file exists before starting it. You know, kind of that precautionary thing. That's what we want to run. We don't want the user to just start it if a lot of the resources and more a more normal example, something that's not just a hello world. Any resources we might need, we want to make sure those are in order and, you know, connected to the internet. If there's virtual machines or databases required, make sure everything's there before the user just starts it. So the user will start the batch file. So now if we come over here and double click on that, it should have started it. Something doesn't seem to be working right. I got a typo in here somewhere. Let me pause this and look for my typo. Okay, sorry about that. It took me a second to find that typo. This is old command prompt instructions, so it's very, very particular. And right here, I missed a space. So after our condition, things are space delimited. So if space exists, the file or folder or whatever resource we want to see if it exists, then we need another space. I forgot that the first time. And it's very particular and makes a difference. And you probably noticed we didn't get a whole lot of wasn't a whole lot of error messages going on there. So putting that space back in there, if exists hello.py space, then run this block, start hello.py. Otherwise, the file's not found. Now if I double click on that, there we go. It went and ran our software, which you probably remember was just hello world and then an input line deposit. So that's kind of the basic idea of that. Is just instead of having the user start the actual program, have the user start a batch file that makes sure all the resources are in order before starting it. And yeah, that was one thing that never having anybody point that out seemed to make learning that way harder than it needed to be. Definitely something I learned the hard way. Bad stuff can happen if you don't do it that way. But just a precautionary thing, just make sure all the resources are in order before opening it, which is actually a little easier to check in a PowerShell file, but y'all can mess around with that. I was just kind of going over the basic concept. Give the user something, let the user open something that makes sure all the resources are in order, and then that thing opens that. Let's see that other one that doesn't work. So if I copy that over to Documents folder. Oh, and obviously, if it's going to be in a different place, just put the whole directory path. Instead of the file name, the whole directory path going to the file is part of the name. I'm just going to put this in the delete folder here. If I run that again, oh, this time it said the file is not found, and then that pause, press any key to continue, which is just going to end it. So that's kind of an important one. I'll delete that later. Let me go back. There we go. And the other thing, the nice thing about these is when we look here, we go to properties, not quite as many options as we would have on the batch file. If we go to properties, here under advanced, oh, that's not where it was. Oh yeah, then a shortcut. That's what I always change. One step further, create a shortcut to this. Like what goes on the desktop or in start menu, the one they'll actually see. And then this is what you give the users. Because if we go in properties, then we have this button. The property for a shortcut, we can change the icon. To have an icon here on the file, I can use documents, scripts. That'll have some icons. There's an icon. Control copy. Come back in here. This lecture, this folder. Control paste. There we go. There's a shortcut. That's another shortcut. That's the shortcut. Properties, change icon. Yeah, that's I can browse to that icon. That way, when I send out the example files, we'll have the icon it's referring to. You probably have a default icon, but this way it's in the folder. There you go. So you can see now that shortcut to it. That's what we give the user because it has the icon we want, change very easily. Then it runs this batch file, which makes sure everything is in order, and then starts our program. Just a much safer way to start the program. And, well, you're probably familiar. Install is just a fancy copy and paste. But we usually don't leave that up to the users, right? We get an installer file. So let's look at that next. Let's go through and look at creating I can't remember which software is currently on my machine. Either a .exe installer or an MSI installer. Either one, we use software to create it. And Whichever one's currently on my machine will create one of those. I think it's the .exe installer. We'll look at that here. Yeah, let's look at that, and then kind of look at the idea of finding the software to do that first. And the idea here is to give the users what they're used to. We could give them these files, copy and paste them on their machine. They could open them that way, but that's not how users are used to installing software, right? We usually have that dialog box we walk through, and it installs it, puts all the files there, sticks stuff down in the start menu, a desktop icon, and users are used to seeing that. So we want to create one of those. So to start with, I'm going to come over here and just look for software to create installer. Just a quick search on software to create this. There's a lot out there. You can try different ones. And what you want to look for in these things is go to these blogs that compare them. So like 5 apps for creating, 4 great tools, the best software package. There's usually lots and lots of lists, the best 10, best 12. There's no shortage of blogs about them. Oh, this is the one, Install Forge is what's currently on my machine. So we'll look at that one. But they're all very similar, and you'll just want to, maybe check a couple of those lists and try some different ones, see which ones you like. I'm going to open Install Forge to do this. First off, though, I'm going to create a new folder and just put all these into a new folder. We'll call this Hello Package. So then I'll just select all those, Control Copy, and paste it. So then we have the working files, and then the package we're ready to install. And then your other things like README, documentation, and user licenses and things like that will go in that package as well. Speaking of documentation, a note that hasn't been made, there's usually a help menu, right? Here it is on Notepad++. Basically instructions on how to do that. Obviously, we don't need any for our example, but just a note that I haven't expressed yet is make sure you write the help menu along the way. Like every time you add a new feature to your software, jump over to that file and add a paragraph describing how to use it. That way, well, 2 things. 1, it's fresh on your mind, so you know exactly how to tell somebody how to use it as soon as you finish making it and testing it, debugging it, all of that. And 2, it's not going to overwhelm you at the end, right? You're not going to spend 6 months building a big, complicated piece of software and then have to think back about everything you did and try to describe all of it at the end. Just do it in little pieces along the way. So like I was saying, I have Install Forge on here. I'm going to open that. It's made by a company called Delicious, Install Forge. And then that gives us this little dialog box that we can fill out and create the installer. So I'm just going to call this Hello. Program version was 1.0. Company, I'll just call this Class Example. Class Examples. And here's all the Windows systems it's going to create an installer for. Graphics, this refers to the little dialog box graphics. If you want to add some stuff in there, I'm just going to leave the default. You do want to make sure and select at least one language. I'm going to put it to English. Put it in English. That's all the general stuff, which is about the dialog box. Then in the setup section here, go in Files, and what files do we want to install on the user's machine? We can just search for those. That one, this Hello package. That's what we're going to install. And has this all this stuff down here about where it's going to put it. It's going to call all of this install path when we're referring to the box. or these dialog box for putting it together. When we see something that says install path, it's going to be all of this. So it looks like it's going to program files. It's going to create one with the company name we gave it, and that app name we gave it, and then it's going to paste our folder in. The rest of this is kind of for updates if there's already some stuff there. We probably do want to click on this tab and include the uninstaller, where they can take it off the machine when they're finished. And that's all of those. Most of those are for updating things. Next one is a splash screen. So that's what shows for a couple seconds. If it's really big software, it's going to take a second. I'm not going to worry about that here. We'll type up some sort of example license. We're going to be looking at GitHub here in a little while, so you'll be able to just use. There's a lot of the generic common licensing things on there. You can just copy and paste that. I'm just going to type something in here. Class example, nothing special here. Serial check checks for old versions. When we finish, if you check one of these boxes, that gives them the option. So if you selected the run program, that just gives them that option to run the program when the installer is finished. I'm going to uncheck that for now. Mostly just type up some sort of license in that section. As we continue down, we got our basic stuff set up. Choose a language, name of the software, company, all that. Choose a language. That's an important one. What files are we installing? Probably want to set up an install package. Type up a license. And down here, well, ours doesn't need to do anything with the registry. But we do want to set up some shortcuts. So like a start menu shortcut and a desktop shortcut. We go to add the desktop shortcut. I'm just going to call that hello. And our target file, so we have that install path. That's where it put everything. And then we created that folder hello package. So we're going to go into that folder that we copied and pasted onto the machine, because that's all an installer is a fancy copy and paste. We go in that, and then we want to start that speak-shortcut. That's the one we actually want to start because it has the icon on it, so it looks a little better, and then it runs the batch file, which checks, makes sure everything's in order, and then does that. That's all we need for that one. And then I'll add another one for the start menu. Start menu shortcut, again, you're going to call it hello, install path. We'll go through that path where it installed it. Go in that folder we put in there. And then once again, it's going to start speak-shortcut. And once all that's done, we're ready to build it. And then we can just click build. And let's do a thing. Where are we going to put this? So I'm going to put it, we probably don't want the installer inside that package. We kind of give them both of them. So I'm going to call this hello.install. We created all that. Now don't worry about running it. And notice you have like save and open buttons. So you can save all that and kind of keep it going. That way you don't have to start over every time. Minimize that. And now we have this installer package, which is probably what users are more used to seeing. So let's go ahead and run that. I'll install this software on my machine here to finish out the demonstration. And that, do you want to like, the things users are used to seeing, right? When they go to put new software on their machine, most users are used to seeing this little dialog box, making sure that they give permission for it to be installed. And then it pops up this dialog box. Oops, I did not realize that shaking would stop the screencast as well. So all I did was shake that to get that out of the way. And it apparently stops the screencasting as well. It stops everything. But the little dialog box like users are used to. We see here, that's the graphics that were referred to in that first window. Little message about it's going to install it. I think everybody's seen these before. Here's where we're going. Program files x86, class example, then hello, those names that it said it was going to fill in. We could change it if we need to. So the next one, create those icons. We set that up in that pack, in that software. Next, oh, it finished installing it, so we just hit finish. And I use that icon that was there. Let me put this somewhere where I can see it, maybe over here. Okay, doesn't quite blend into the back end there, but you can see here's that shortcut to open that. Double click on that. It ran our software. Push enter at the end. And there should also be one down here in the start menu. So it puts it under a folder with that company name made up, class examples. There's that software hello. So click that, and it runs our hello world. So that's just the basic idea there. It's the thought is kind of like the thing with GUIs. Give the users what they expect to see. And there's software to set up those install packages, which is what the users are used to using. So that's finished. Might as well go in here and do that last step, because we also included the uninstaller. So it's going to fit the standard when they're ready. If they don't want the software on the machine anymore, they can just go in to the normal uninstaller program, and right there's the uninstaller for it. Double click that, and it uninstalled everything. It's successfully removed, okay? And if I close out of this, you can see that icon has been removed, and same thing on the start menu. It removed it, uninstalled it from the computer. So the stuff the users are used to. I wanted to kind of cover that quick. I know that was quickly, but just to give you an idea, because when I was learning that, in particular, this sort of protection level to make sure the resources are in order, it was way harder than it needed to be as when I had to go figure that out for myself, because tutorials always want to leave that off. And just look for some different software to create these install packages, because that's what your users are used to seeing. So that's what you want to give the user, not just a big folder, not the big folder of files. Let them install that folder. And yeah, that's kind of the main point there. So a couple more odds and ends this week, and yeah, a bunch of odds and ends. There's a little more time to cover some of this stuff this week, but hopefully that one is something you will find very, very useful as you progress forward with making software. So another thing in this module is a quick pass at choosing other languages. As we finish this course, the Introduction to Software Development, the next step is going to be a language-specific course. 3 that I know are running soon, the next 3 that I'm teaching. In the summer, Python will run. Then in the fall, running C#. And in next spring, running Java. And Skip set it up that way because the mobile app development course, we teach that in Java here. And the Java class next spring will run the full 16 weeks with the mobile app development overlapping for the second 8 weeks. And that way I can kind of run them together and prepare for the first 8 weeks. There's one thing, just kind of a warning, the computer system here at the school will let you register for your language-specific course and the mobile app development course at the same time as co-requisites instead of prerequisite. But there are a couple slight issues with that. The biggest one is things that don't show up till later. So like if the language course is a 16-week course, things that show up in week like somewhere around 12 or 13 show up in day 1 of the mobile app development course, and not just vaguely mentioned. You need to be quite comfortable with them on day 1 of the mobile app development course. And every time I've taught the course so far, there's been people that went ahead and registered to try to take them as a co-requisite instead of prerequisite. And they're kind of lost at the beginning. Just the first 3-4 weeks, they spend playing catch up. And when we review the stuff and go over it, so the concepts are still covered, but taking it as a prerequisite, there'd be 4 to 6 weeks of practice with that before starting mobile app. So that's kind of, they have to spend all the time trying to learn the new stuff and getting the practice they should have had beforehand. Everybody that's happened to in my classes still passed the class and, understanding it well by the end, but it's those first 3 or 4 weeks of just rushing around trying to play catch up because they didn't get any practice with the concepts that don't show up to the later half of the language specific course, but you need to be comfortable with on day 1 of the mobile app development course. It's still possible, so it makes it extra busy at the beginning trying to catch up on the mobile app course if you take them together. It's much better to take the language and then the mobile app. But those are the next, Python this summer, C# in the fall, and Java in the spring are the next 3 language courses I'll be teaching, and then there are others running as well. So whichever language you want to take. And on Ivy Learn, there's some links going to tutorial point pages, kind of walking through introductions to the lectures. They're pretty thorough. I just wanted to point out something here, a place to get practice. I believe I've mentioned this before. Ripple.it, R-E-P-L, and we pronounce that Ripple. So this is an online IDE, has some really nice collaborative features. More than one person can time, have a chat room, kind of like working with Google Docs, if you're familiar with that. But there's this huge list down here of languages that it knows. So all 3 of the ones in the tutorial are there and more. And you'll just need to pick the language that you want to work with. You might need to set up an account. Usually you can go in and just start messing around with it. That's fine. But this is a very useful one. So you might want to set up an account anyway. I'll log into my account. Maybe log in. Oh, there it goes. Switch over to the list of my ripples, and I'll just create a new one. There's a lot of different languages on there. There's a couple tutorials, but this is a place you won't have to install anything else on your computer to mess around with those and see which language you like. I'll just open a Java one here. Create dribble. It kind of sets up a package. There's a console to run it in, the code over here. Well, it puts a hello world by default. I'm going to erase that and type a new one in. So if we were in Java, we'd ask for a class, call it main, and then inside there put our main method. So public static void main, passing some strings, and I'm just going to print something to the console. System.out.println. Here is a Java example. You just type up the Java code here, or whatever language you want to test in. This IDE knows a whole lot of them. It's ready to go. Once you get it typed up, just hit the run button. And for Java, it's going to compile it. Why did I throw a red line? Did I get a typo in there? Oh, there it is. And then threw the output out to the console after it compiled it. No compile errors, so then it ran the code. Looks like it's still doing something. But that's just something that I was thinking might be useful for you. So ripple.it, R-E-P-L.it. It's an online IDE that knows a whole lot of languages. If I go back up to this folder of my ripples, I'll just hit the new button to go over that again. So there's Java, HTML, Python, R, C++. There's tons and tons and tons of languages to kind of work on several different versions of Python, C#, F#, Swift, whichever language you want to take. Several semesters now, Swift has been running out of the Bloomington campus. Nick's been teaching that online. That is Apple's proprietary language. So if your interest lie in, say, working for Apple, that you might want to learn that language. C# is kind of Microsoft specific. That's running in the fall here. But there's a lot of different ones. You'll just want to look at some different ones and pick which language you want to work with. And you can see it's a really, really long list of languages that this particular IDE knows. So I just thought I'd suggest that. That way you don't have to install new things to work through those tutorial examples and kind of preview some other languages there. So one of the main things for this module is taking a look at GitHub. It's a very popular repository, which is essentially a place to store code. As you progress further along, there's a lot of features in there, a lot more that can be done than we're going to look at just to start with. But we're going to basically just create a little module, store it on GitHub, and then clone it into a project that we're working on. Hopefully that makes sense. So instead of storing it locally, just a place to keep all your code so that you can refer to it. And we won't do it in today's example, but you can, you don't even necessarily have to download it. You can just refer to it over on GitHub and bring that in, import it into your project, to your program from there. We'll just do a clone one down into the thing. The first thing is probably put a module, something on GitHub to use and kind of look at that. So I'm just going to make the basic example. I think I've created one almost exactly like this before. Print hello world. Whoops. I gotta quit using that key. It's still sticking on me. Just making a little Python file here. I'll just stick it in the delete folder for now. And I'm going to call this hello.py. I'm going to use the lowercase h. So just a file called hello.py. Go ahead and close out of this. And if we come over to the browser and go to github.com. So this is kind of there'll be a sign-in page when you create your account. My laptop remembers that I've been here a few times. But repository, that's where you're going to store a particular little block of code. So if you hit new to create a new one, and we need to give it some sort of name. Class example. So that's a valid name. Example repository. Introducing GitHub. Whoops. Spelled that wrong. Introduction to software. Of course. So a lot of this should be fairly obvious. Some sort of description, whether you want it to be public or private. Create some sort of README description stuff, all the documentation. We can add a license in here. Let's just, the GNU license, just a basic one, and create repository. And that kind of set up this little thing. So we have our license here. This should look kind of familiar, the regular GNU license there if you need to use it. Let's see, back up a level. The read me right now doesn't have much other than that description I typed in. You see, you can create a lot of that documentation is set up and organized to go here. I'm going to upload that file we just created. I think I put that in delete. That's where I usually put them. Yeah, there it is. Upload that. And then whenever you make a change, so it's kind of set up with a tree structure. So there's the master branch, and that's the overall changes. And the new branch are kind of like suggested things. You can create a little side branches where you can make little changes to your code, and when you're really happy with them, then commit those changes back to the main branch of the tree. I'm just going to throw this on the master branch for now. Just kind of getting started into this. While that's processing, I'm going to delete this off my computer just to help accentuate the point that it's stored here online now. So you can see it here, just that simple Python module we can import, and it contains one method to use, fairly straightforward there. And yeah, so basically just a place to store the code. So we've committed to 2 changes, which is basically created the thing and then added a file. There's only one branch, so if we wanted to, we could come up here, do pull request, and what kind of says right here, it'll appear here in a searchable filter list. We'll get a list of all the suggested changes to that code that have been made. And then we can decide which ones to put onto our master project. Yeah, you can flip through this. You're going to click around on buttons and look at it. There's quite a bit it does. So at the introduction level, just think it's holding the code for us, a place to store the code and the project. So we have some documentation about this module and then the module itself. And now with our code up here, we need a way to access that from our machine locally. The easiest way is to put the software Git on your local machine. So you can just kind of search for that, install Git for Windows. I already searched for it while getting everything ready this morning. But if you just search install Git for Windows or something like that, you should get to this, find this link, git-scm-com. We go in here, just kind of, I assume everybody's downloaded software before and run installers. All this should look familiar. One thing that might be a little bit different than things you've seen before, some of these options, there's different ones, so go ahead and probably check the default. Make sure these 3 and this one are checked. But going with it should be the default, so you should be good there. Your editor might be set different, so choose which editor you want to use by default. Earlier when I was getting everything ready for the video, it had some weird editor that I'd never even heard of before set as the default, so it definitely wasn't on my machine. I'm just going to go with Notepad++. And make sure when you get to this page get from the command line and third-party software. So you want to make sure and select that second option. Well, it says recommended. And that's the one that should set up the environment variables for you. And I believe everything else should be good for the defaults. Got Windows, yeah. Well, obviously, if you're on a Linux or Mac, the one appropriate for your machine, but you probably would have downloaded a different installer then. So most everything should be good for all of that. And then you'll just hit install. It'll download all the files. I'm going to pause the video while it does that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so that installer finished without problems. I'll close this one. I'm going to stay on this page for now. And one thing I'm going to check, it should be okay. But a couple years ago, there was a problem with it. So maybe go into the environment variables. We saw setting those, and make sure Git got added to the environment variables. That way you can use it from your command prompt. We walked through this in another video. Environment variables, and all the programming languages should be under an environment variable called pass. And make sure Git was added on there in the install. And if not, just navigate to those, like we saw in that other video, just navigate to those files and copy the address in here. That way your command prompt and, well, the operating system itself knows about GitHub, or about Git. And then Git accesses stuff from GitHub. GitHub is a place to store it for that software. And, well, it would have put a couple things on here. A GUI, the command prompt, they have their own command prompt. One looks like bash. You kind of do all the same things from all of these if you're more comfortable working with bash. Or just a GUI if you just want to lean back in your chair and drag the mouse around. And I'm just going to go to PowerShell. We've looked at that a couple times. So, since it's in an environment variable, we can use it right from here. Let's see, I'm going to go in here and set up a folder. I'll go into the module lectures, examples, a new folder here, Git example. And I'm going to copy this path. Control C, come over here, and I'll set my working directory to that. So just set location changes the working directory in PowerShell. So now that I'm there, I can ask for Git, and I want to clone a particular one of the repositories. Get a clone or a copy of the files on that repository. That's why I let this open. Here's this clone or download button. Well, obviously you can download the zip file yourself and do all that. I'm just going to copy the address here. The little button here puts it on the clipboard, so I can come back over to PowerShell and paste that in. So once we get the directory set up, the command is just git. We're going to call the git software and then ask for the command clone, and we're going to clone this repository into that directory. So, get all this message saying what it's doing, all of that stuff, and if there's no error messages, that means it should be there. I'll come back over here, yep, you can see just kind of a fancy download, basically, fancy copy and paste, but when you know what you're doing, typing can be a whole lot quicker than dragging the mouse around. So I guess now I could make an example to call that. So if I start idle, if I can spell it correctly, go to idle, file, new file, And we need to import this. So you got the license and the README and everything from that Git repository and this hello.py module. So in the test file, I can import that. So import class example.hello as Git. That'd be a good name. And I should be able to call git.sayHi, call the method that's stored in that module. Save this. A whole bunch of clicking to get down to where that folder is. Git example, and then this is, I'll just call this test. That works. Test.py. Now when I run that, it ran the point in the module. We've seen that before. Nothing super fancy there, but the main thing is the storage on it, right? You don't have to store it on a local machine. You can build up all that code, store it there. As computers change over the years, right? Laptops wear out, we buy new ones. We still have that code, and we can just bring it right in from GitHub whenever we need it. So it's kind of a place to store our libraries. It's called that a start. And in more advanced settings, I started to do that in the video, to bring it directly in from GitHub without read it from there instead of downloading it, but it was getting kind of complicated. It's like, oh yeah, this class has the word introduction in the title. I should just start with the easy one, but you're definitely going to go on here. You know, use this to build up your portfolio, store things. Yeah, and that's basically where we're going to start at. Go in here, click around on things, and kind of get used to it. Put some stuff on there just to practice. When you're ready to delete stuff, I'll look at that. If you want to delete stuff and clear it up, the button's kind of hidden. What you do is go to the top level of the particular repository, and in settings, because if you're clicking around, playing around, you're probably going to playing around, figuring it out, you're probably going to get some extra stuff on there. So the top level of the repository, go in settings, and way down here in danger zone, here's where the delete option is. You can choose delete this repository, and then there's a couple confirmations. So you have to type in the name of it. s5/class_example. And yeah, a whole bunch of confirmations to delete stuff. So it's not something that's accidentally going to happen. And I usually ask for a password as well to delete it, but I guess I've added and deleted enough things to do that. So basically just set you up a GitHub account, download the Git software, and click new to start storing your libraries on here. And you can clone them. Once you install the Git software, you can clone that library that's stored online directly into your project when you need it. And as you get more advanced with it, there's ways to bring it directly in. But a very, very useful thing, and it's also common to use it as a place for a portfolio. So when you have some really nice work, you can put it up there, and then when you apply for software development jobs, they can kind of look at the code you have on GitHub to see if they like what you're doing and stuff. So, but the main thing, the whole repository. So store your libraries here as you build up objects and modules containing a lot of methods and objects, and store them here. And that's a convenient online place to store them, reliable, that you can get to them anytime you need it just by downloading it. And well, I was doing this directly in Powershell, but you saw here they send you their own command prompt or bash prompt if you want to use those.
But just kind of go in there and start messing around with it, and it's fairly straightforward. You should get quite used to it quite quick. If you have any questions, let me know. But there is a lot it can do, so kind of like the programming languages, you're going to get started, but there's so much it can do, it's going to take a while to learn all of it. But if you have any questions about getting started, let me know.